Man, you guys ever you ever think about just picking up your whole life and just moving to a new city and just starting fresh?
I've thought about it.
I've done it.
No, you're supposed to say honestly same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Ooh, honestly same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly same.
Honestly,
Honestly,
same.
same.
Honestly
Honestly,
same. Honestly same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly same.
All right.
Apparently we're
So
podcasting
popular.
or something.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Everybody
weird.
can hear. Well,
Yes. Yep.
I can hear.
we got it. We feel like we have levels.
How about me?
Yes.
Do you feel good about? Can you hear me?
How do we feel about me?
How do
So,
we feel
tell me how
about
you feel about me.
Welcome to Brittany episode part 2.
Yes.
We're gonna just talk about Brittany and how we feel about her.
And that's why I'm sitting in the middle.
Yes.
I have a lot of thoughts about Brittany.
We're gonna whoever's sharing their thoughts about Brittany sits in the middle, so we're, it's
Yes.
like,
We're gonna play musical chairs during this episode.
Yes.
And we're all gonna switch. But you don't get to sit in the middle unless you have thoughts about you.
Yeah. Do you ever think about you?
From time to time, but I would just like you guys to tell me. So that's
right.
fine.
More so, do you ever think about living in a different city? We already did the intro, but that's just me bringing it back up. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show.
Contrary to everything we just said, this is actually not a Brittany episode. It's
Yeah,
about
unfortunately
moving to a new city. It's exciting. It's scary. It's mostly scary. And I think everybody experiences it usually at least once in their life. We're going to talk about the differences between when that happens, when you are young, like a kid in school and your parents make that decision for you, or like if you have to make that decision for yourself, because we've all experienced kind of different things, I feel like, with this subject.
And I think that I didn't realize my experiences in this until we talked about doing this episode. So I do think that will be something that people will relate to.
Well,
Yeah.
before we dive in,
Who are you?
who are we?
Who are we indeed? My name is Leah.
She is loving that seat today. She has got this under control.
Who are any of us, really? Well, I'm Ross.
Well, everyone knows.
Everyone has something to say about our third host.
I'm Brittany.
And welcome to Honestly Same. I'm going to have the podcaster voice today because
good
I'm
guys,
sitting
yeah.
in the middle.
All right, welcome. Yeah, we're talking about moving to different and new places and cities in this episode and how we've each experienced those things. So do we want to kind of start this one, like you were saying, like laying it out kind of each of our experiences with that? Because obviously...
We know we're going to do that because we made it the bullet point.
Well, I mean, the people don't know that yet. They have to subscribe to the Patreon to get the
see
exclusive
all of our bullet
screenshots of our bullet points.
We're just
to
tearing down the
see-
fourth wall here, guys. We
to
have bullet
see
points.
If
And that's the first one.
yeah, so that way they can see what we do and do not talk about, right? So
Yes.
hey, there's a lot of bullet points we skip over. Let's lie and say that's true.
That's true.
We skip. We're whispering. I'll whisper it now. Yeah, there's so many things we skip over. So yeah, make sure to follow us at Instagram.
At Instagram. We are doing so
On
well.
the line.
On the
Maybe we should just start
at
over.
honestly same pod. Hey, maybe we should just move on from this. Move on? Move to a new city?
On a segue?
You guys ever... This is me on my Segway. I'm keeping my balance. Hey, let's talk about moving.
Yes.
Who moved first?
I think you probably moved first.
It was me.
So we are.
You have
gonna
a
talk
hair
about
on your
Brittany.
face. Can I please get this hair?
Please.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
good.
That's been bothering me.
Good. Thank you.
So-
Thank you very
Your
much.
face has really been bothering me.
I'm good. Well,
So now
He's
let's
thinking
talk
about moving to a new city.
yeah. And now I'm really
So
thinking
now
about
let's talk about Brittany moving.
moving
Okay.
to a new city. Yeah.
So my first big move where things were different, I like had to acknowledge that, I'm out of my once safe space. I was in 5th grade, the middle of 5th grade. Let me tell you, this is the biggest con of moving in 5th grade.
Okay.
I swear to God, I don't know long division because my school hadn't learned it yet. And the school I moved to already covered it.
Whoa.
So I literally just never learned it. I just fucking
I can teach you
scribbled
long division
on
if you
each
want. If that would
piece of
make you
paper.
feel like a more complete person in your
No,
life,
I don't
like
give a shit.
I will completely show you.
But
how to
I
do
Really?
love that you
Well-
didn't miss a beat in 5th grade.
it. We did it in 4th at my school. So I feel like I was more like the school you moved to than
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
imagine.
Well, guys, how long does it take?
To divide.
Anyway, sorry.
Yes. So that was the biggest con
That
as a
actually
fifth
sucks.
grader. Yeah, because then I just was behind. I literally just couldn't grasp how
Did
to do
you
long
just
division.
fake your way through
Yes.
anytime it was brought up? What did you do? Just put a number?
I think at some point I like figured it out on my own. Wow. Kind of.
I would have just
But-
snuck a calculator probably like
That's the thing. At some point, we just had calculators. Like, why do I need to be able to do long division on a piece of paper when you could simply hand me a calculator?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not a pilgrim. I have
No.
technology. I can do
Exactly.
this.
Pilgrims do long division.
Yes. Yeah, that's
They
actually
did.
where it spawned from. Pilgrims invented
Spawned from.
long division. That's where it started. Was the Pilgrims,
This
actually.
is going to be a good
Yes.
episode, guys.
I will say, to your point, I luckily got to avoid having to move as a youngin' in school. I almost
Yeah.
had to. I almost had to
That's
move from
scary.
Crooksville to Zanesville. And
Big jump there.
which I mean, but like
For a fifth grader,
at
it
that point in
is.
time, it was like I'm losing all of my friends and
Moving
everything sucks. So you
schools,
experienced
yeah,
that.
that's a
Yeah.
huge thing.
I luckily never had
So,
to.
Like
in the
ho-
middle of the year.
Yeah. So like how far like in the middle though? Like did you have enough time where you were able to make connections once you got there?
It's kind of a blur. Like, I remember leaving my other school. I have very vivid memories of that. But then I think I was so anxious getting to my new school. I didn't absorb much of that. But on my very first day, my childhood best friend, who used to live next to my dad, and then my dad moved, she moved, whatever. I passed her in the hallway. It was Laura. I didn't know she went to that school. I hadn't talked to her in years.
Oh.
What?
Yeah. So that, like, we immediately, like, rekindled, like, exchanged phone
that's
numbers in
awesome.
the hallway.
Yeah, that's actually incredible.
So I was so lucky. She's a year older than me. I didn't have any classes with her or anything, but that was, like,
No, but having that's like that's
best thing that could have happened to me.
literally like having like a lifeboat is just like a person that you're like, oh my gosh, I know this person and this can be the person that like carries me
And it
through
wa-
the rest of this
It's
crazy experience.
Yes, it's so insane because I think that is where I got really lucky. A lot of people won't have that invisible string when they go somewhere.
Yeah.
But you never know what's going to happen. And that kind of led me down the path of like, okay, I will get through this. I already have, that
Yeah.
one person. And then just knowing, obviously she did the same thing because she wasn't living in the same spot. This is a newer school for her too.
So she had already kind of gone through it.
So yeah, that was I just remember that when we first, because we didn't talk. I was like, I never moved. I didn't really have a big move.
Yeah.
But I'm remembering that, and that was like, yeah, my lifeline at that time. I feel like it took me a long time to like get a group of friends there. When I think about it, I don't feel like it really happened until like 7th grade.
Yeah.
That I like
Interesting.
really like had a group of friends.
Like where you connected.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you had like friends at school.
Yeah,
but,
like I wasn't not talking to any of my like classmates
Yeah.
or anything. I had like a lunch table, all that stuff, but I don't think I started making like school friends that I was going to see outside of school until 2 years later. Whereas my old school, I was having sleepovers, I was doing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I already knew that life, but I didn't have that life because it's really hard to jump into that when you.
Yeah, I'm very glad that I avoided that. When it got presented to me,
Sleepovers?
yeah, I'm very glad I avoided sleepovers and friends.
Yeah, I'm super glad.
Knew a lot of long division though, I'll tell you. Yeah, no, I almost had to move schools. Luckily did not. Got to talk my way out of that one in like, I want to say like 7th or 8th grade, maybe. Leah, did you ever have to move as a kid?
I never did. I
Okay.
never did. And I feel like that's so, like, you hear about it and you see movies and things like that. Like, as someone like me who grew up in the same place and I lived in the same house most of my life, it's crazy to think about leaving behind everything at such a formidable age.
I just
because
thought something else.
It's, what?
What happened?
I also went to the Career Center at 16 and totally moved schools.
Yeah,
Oh.
you've also mentioned that.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah, I
look,
said-
all these things.
and-
Yeah, folks, we're like talking about like what we're going to talk about in this episode. And Brittany's like, I have nothing to
Nothing.
add.
I will not be speaking
I will not
during
be speaking during this episode.
That was my idea to begin with.
Literally.
Verbatim, Brittany said, this is a Leah episode.
Yeah. I'm like, I moved. She's like, no, you didn't, and neither did I. Leah moved. I'm like, all right.
And I said, okay, moving on to my second move.
Yeah, so later in life,
gosh.
when I moved for the second time.
Well, school is your second home when you're young. And I feel like, especially like not having a say in it, because obviously your parents, I mean, you got a say in going to the career center, but having that first move at an age where like you're really starting to like depend on your friendships at that age. And I feel like same thing with you guys being in middle school around the time where you almost had to move. Like if I had to have like made a move that big, like that big of a difference in my life, I feel like I would have been the type of person that would have never made solid friendships. I mean, of course I say that, like I hope I would, but I feel like I would be the person that would just have a lot of like school friends and not like,
You're like, okay, I'm never getting close to anyone ever again.
yeah, I think I would have issues with trying to build connections because almost like, did you feel like you had like this weird loyalty to the friends that you had? Like, I
Yes.
can't have a new best friend.
Yes, we literally talked about it on one of the previous episodes where I was like my spacing one of the girls from my old school, and she like told me I was annoying and to stop messaging her. If you guys remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know, I could have been interacting with my new like school friends and stuff, but I was like stuck on
Yeah.
like my old friends.
Oh man.
How did that feel? How did moving with the career center feel compared to moving as a child?
Kind of like Leah said, where I made the decision to do the career center. I will say I definitely had to like figure out who I was, because you just, when you're going day to day in high school, like everything's the same, and then you're told you're going to go here where no one knows each other, so you have to figure that out.
Were there any girls from your school that were in, or guys in
Yes.
that program with you?
Yes, and I'm still her name is Karen, and she's amazing nail tech. She's
Oh.
an amazing nail tech, which in cosmetology school you like learn the basics
Yeah.
of nails. And we're still friends. I made her
good.
work with me this past Christmas at Lush.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but
We love a forced friendship.
yeah, I forced her into that. I forced her into that. I said, I'm picking you up for school. We're walking in together. We're walking out together.
You're
Yes.
going, this is your new path.
Hold my hand.
I once didn't have a choice as a child. Now I take choices away from everyone
Yes.
I encounter. Okay, so Leah, you know, we were talking about like choices as a child, choices as an adult, all that sort of stuff. You have a lack of a choice when you're younger. Let's talk about your choice
Your big choice.
of
I made
moving.
a big choice. I make lots of big choices.
Lots of big choices. Let's talk about the one from moving. Cleveland to Columbus.
From Cleveland to Columbus, which if you're not an Ohio native or just bad at geography and you live here, it's about a 2-hour drive. And in like Ohio, we don't do miles, we do hours. Which
That's so true, Queen.
I really recently found out that not everybody does that. It's a 2-hour drive.
Oh,
A lot of
I
people
know,
they
I'm
go,
like,
oh,
yeah.
it's this many miles. I'm like, I don't care. How long is it going to take me to get there?
Oh no, I never speak in miles at
No.
all.
Yeah. not? What are
that's
we?
apparently not a thing most other places.
That also started with pilgrims.
Yes. Pilgrims invented mileage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
They said, we're
For their
not using
cars.
kilometers here,
Yeah.
which is really inconvenient. But anyway, I made the jump to move here after having been in a long distance relationship with Nick for a year. So we were like, I think a little shy of a year actually. And I had come up to a point in my career. I was working at a staffing agency for my uncle's girlfriend, and it was a really awesome opportunity, and I got to learn a lot. But I had kind of reached like a turning point where I was like, okay, I'm either going to continue down this path, and I wasn't sure like if I was super excited to be on that path, or I was thinking, you know, I kind of wanted to step away from what I was doing anyways. I never wanted to move solely for a relationship. I always thought like, no, I want to live for me. I don't want to do that. But I had reached a point where I was kind of over it and I was ready to do something different. And I thought, why not look here and just see if there's stuff that I can do there instead, since ultimately that was kind of like my happy place, was like coming here, staying with Nick on the weekends. I even got to a point where I was coming here like on Wednesdays. Like I would literally like drive here after work on Wednesdays because it was like the middle of the week. And then I would like wake up at like 5 a.m. and get ready and like drive all the way home.
Was that
and go
helpful
straight
to
to
like
work.
microdose your move?
No, not really. I feel like the back and forth was a lot. And I think that was the biggest part was I did have, after moving, a lot more of that microdosing. because I was still driving to band practice, which is actually a 3-hour drive from where I live now, to where we were practicing at the time. So I would make a 3-hour drive there and back twice a week. And that was a huge thing. But I didn't want anybody to think I wasn't as dedicated to what I was doing anymore. But I did still have like that, like sort of reaching out via MySpace to be like, hey, we're still friends. Like I'm still trying.
Yeah.
Honestly, for a really long time. But moving here, I was living at my parents' house at the time before I moved here. And so I literally just threw a bunch of my clothes in a trash bag. Like they kept all my furniture because it was still going to be a guest room. And so literally I packed up a bunch of my stuff. I essentially picked up Zima. I picked up a dog like on the way and was just like, cool, new life. Let's go. And it was exciting because I was definitely excited to like be in my happy place full time. The place that felt like vacation. It felt like my place where I went to get away from home. So I felt like it was sort of like a happy jump. Like I was excited to make that jump. You know what I mean? Whereas like if it wasn't my decision or if I was doing it before I was ready, I don't know if it would have worked out as well.
You had like intentions.
Yes.
Getting here.
Exactly. And I didn't know exactly like what I was going to be doing work-wise yet, but I was like, oh, I've done a lot of different things and I'm willing to do a lot of different things. So that part didn't really bother me so much. I just knew that I was ready for kind of like a new chapter.
So taking the relationship part out of it, did any of it feel, because like you're talking about like the exciting, like it felt like a vacation, like the new happy place, like did it feel almost like a whole like new world in a way? And I asked that because when I moved from super small town Crooksville, Ohio up to here, to me I was like, I'm experiencing the world. And like friends who already lived here were like, it's Columbus, dude. Like it's High Street. That's where everything is.
High Street.
But for me growing up, again, like I had to drive, 20 minutes to go to a McDonald's or a Walmart or something like that. So like coming up here where I was like, whoa, there's like, and not that this didn't happen in like Zanesville, I guess, but like not anywhere near at the same level. But I'm like, oh my God, there's like shows up here to go to. There's concerts. Like I was doing a similar thing that you were doing, Leah.
Yeah.
Not for the relationship side of things, but like more for just like life experiences and friendships.
Yes.
I was driving up to Columbus almost every weekend for a little while of like developing friends up here and going to parties up here and shows and all this sort of stuff where I was like, this whole other world up here is filled with like way more exciting things.
What's nice about what your experience sounds like is that you were coming here to experience it and meeting a lot of people and making those friendships. I felt like I moved for one person sort of.
Right.
And it was like you got here when you had enough people and enough of like a network, I feel like, that it made sense for you. When I moved here, I did have like my happy place, my happy person, but like finding my place in all of it, like most of my friends,
your job, your friends.
Yes. Like most of my friends for at least the first, like I've lived here since 2016. So like for the first half of that, most of my friends were just like, hey, these are Nick's friends. And like, I'm also here, if that makes sense. Like I had work friends, but I never went the extra mile of like, hey, let's have like a relationship outside of this.
Right.
It took me a long time to get to a point where I was making that effort. And I kept thinking like, wow, what's wrong with me? Nobody's inviting me to stuff. Like, I think I'm fun, right?
It's because you're spooky. You're scary.
I'm so spooky. No, I think I wasn't really putting myself out there in a way that like warranted that. Like, I'd be like, okay, work's over. I'm going home. Bye, everybody. Like, and disconnecting myself from it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is interesting. Cause like, to your point, like what brought me here was like me kind of seeking out that network of like, because at the time I wanted to work in the music industry and be creative and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, there's way more of a scene for all of that in Columbus than there is in Zanesville, and certainly than there is in Crooksville.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of afforded that, like, it was like a almost more of a fun dive into a new world. Because again, I'm like, everything in Columbus is exciting to me.
Yes.
And I immediately moved into a house where there were 9 of us in the house.
Yeah.
So it was
oh my gosh.
It was just like hang out, have fun every day. Yes, there was still like, responsibilities of jobs and people were going to school and all that sort of stuff. But it was also, hey, let's all gather in the living room and watch movies all day after everyone's off work or whatever. So like, to your point, it was like I did have the intention of why I was moving up here, but I did have that little bit of a safety net to kind of cushion the blow.
Yeah.
Where like it was a culture shock, but also wasn't, because it was like a culture that I was so excited to experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was all
It
these
wasn't
friends.
a
It was
scary
it was
dive,
just like,
but it was still a dive.
right. Like, and when I think back to that, like moving like that, like I think I said this when we were planning out this episode, is like, moving out of my hometown is not a thing you do. It's just not. The biggest move you make is to Zanesville, 15 to 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Because again, that's where everything is. That's where the mall is, the Walmart, the Taco Bell.
You just move closer to the stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's essentially what anyone would do if you would leave Crooksville. So there was a part of me that was like, wow, I'm moving to Columbus. This is an incredibly crazy change. And also you assume that everything in Columbus is like one-way streets and downtown skyscrapers. And then you're like, wait, no, there's like parts that are just Zanesville, but closer to, it's like, it's all kind of the same.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to say is like, we had opposite like sort of experiences in that regard, because I definitely like where I grew up and where I live now, like I live out in the country now, but like I live near Westerville, and like Menor, Ohio is essentially like Cleveland's Westerville. It's like Christian white suburbia. And I feel like being in Westerville now, I didn't have that culture shock of like, wow, people are different here. Or like, wow, there's like, I can drive and there's this stuff. Cause like, it was all very similar and very familiar in that way.
Okay.
But it was definitely more along the lines of like, like, I don't know, figuring out like, where do I go to the grocery store now? Like, where do I buy my, my groceries? Where am I going to get gas? Like, but I think, the biggest thing for me was definitely like all of my family, all of my friends. It was like I couldn't just be like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna drive like 30 minutes and then like I'll see you guys. I had to drive 2 hours to like 3 hours to see the people that I was normally seeing on like a daily basis.
And that is so exhausting to do. It's a different experience. You're getting there and you're like already zonked.
Well, and it's still that way. Like I still try really hard to have like, all my family has obviously left Ohio now, so I'm the only one that's left in Ohio. But like as far as friendship goes, I am the one that's driving out there all the time. And that's on me. I know that I chose to move here, but I figured after 7 years that it would be like, hey, let's go see you sometimes. And that's not how it is.
It's kind of nice to hear someone else say that, because same thing for me.
Yeah.
I literally, one time out of like kind of happenstance, but other than that, I don't think any friend that I had,
my family doesn't.
Yeah, from Crooksville. So the only family of mine that would actively come up here were my grandmas. They would come up here we started making a routine of like they'd come up here once a month. We would get lunch together and like.
See, and that's nice though.
That was great. No one else. Like eventually, my mom and like my sisters came up, but like legitimately, last year was the first time my dad had ever came to Columbus. Like he's never known one place that I've lived up here. Not because he doesn't care, but because, again, it is a bubble in Crooksville. And if you're making a trip to Columbus, there's got to be a big reason you're going.
And they think they got to like pack a suitcase to come to Columbus.
100%. And so to your point, Leah, like no friends of mine, like that's how those friendships just sort of faded away, which ultimately
where that isolation comes in. You not only have to make new friends to fill that physical void while you're here, because you can always talk to your friends, but then there's also like the absence of everyone you were around forever
and
until
knowing
this moment.
that life is continuing on without you. Like there are new inside jokes that are being made and you're not there, and so then the next time you see everybody, you're like, oh, you guys are all talking about this and I have no idea what you're referring to. And
I'll also say this is probably where we differ with the big moves as well, is like there was a part of me that was like, I know I'm not really wanting to be like high school friends anymore. I know I'm wanting kind of a different life.
Push
so it
yourself
was
to like grow a little bit.
Yeah, it was not that I wanted to never speak to them or never see them again or anything like that. But I was like, no, I know, I'm moving for a reason. I'm welcoming this new world and this new change.
And that's the thing is, I don't think I was ready to abandon like the life that I had necessarily.
Yeah.
And I don't think that going into moving, I even thought about that because I was like, it's 2 hours. That's not that bad. Until I realized like, it's not that bad for me. And I will make that drive and I continue to make that drive. But for other people, they're like, what's the occasion? Like I've had people come for my birthday parties or like when it was like, hey, like in months in advance, you know, we make these plans where we're like, hey, you know, in 2 months, we're going to do this on this day at this time, and we're all going to be there.
Yeah.
Outside of that, nobody's ever just like, hey, like, why don't I come? Like, even if I say, like, why don't you come visit this weekend? It has to be a whole to do. Same thing, like, oh, you need a suitcase. Like, but I can make a day trip to you and make that 2 hour drive and back.
People do not realize, like, that they're capable of those things because they just won't do it.
Yeah.
Like
I don't want to make that drive necessarily either. Like,
well, that's like anytime, it's the exact same thing that you said. Anytime I think about going home to Crooksville, like it ends up being like an hour 25, hour 30.
Yeah.
So like it is a little longer than the hour that I always kind of assumed it was, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing though. I'm like, I have to be in like the right mood, the right energy, because it's not just like go down, have dinner, then come back home.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be down there, it's also, I feel bad if I don't see literally everybody.
make the most of your time.
It is a whole day. It's like I need to get down there at a relatively early time. And then like, again, my family's like split and all over the place. So it's like, all right, visit grandma here and visit dad here. And when can I visit mom? And then when can I visit siblings? And when can I, you know, so it's like, it does ultimately end up being a like, all right, if I can get there at 11 a.m., I can probably make it home by midnight, you know? And like, it does become a day trip. And so what you were saying is like, I'm totally willing to do that. Most often more willing than anybody else is to come up here. But you do have to like commit the energy to visiting. And that sometimes makes me feel bad for like not wanting to go visit because I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can make a whole day.
Well, and I've gotten to a point where like, sometimes I just don't tell people. Most times I just don't tell people when I'm coming into town because I'll be like, I'm coming into town specifically for this reason for these people.
Yeah.
And if I've had people be like, "Whoa, you're rude. You didn't even tell me you were here." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, but like
that is a con of moving somewhere else
Yes.
and people thinking that you like they're the only person in your life when you go back home.
Well,
I can't
and
stand that.
I don't think anybody's ever said it like seriously, but I still take it to heart of being like, oh, maybe I should have tried to see you while I was here, but also working around so many different people's
like,
schedules.
That's called a
and,
skill
like,
trip. Even if they mean it in a nice way, you still had shit going on. Otherwise, you would have reached out to them.
Because my pushback on that is like, well, why don't you come to me? Like that's all there's, it's always a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
Like because I've noticed there've been like some friends like in recent years when I've seen any like past like high school friends or whatever and hung out with them in Crooksville, they kind of make passing comments and they don't mean them in a negative way.
No, but
subconsciously in their mind, they're like, they literally will say, yeah, man, whenever you're down here next, let me know if you're ever coming down. They don't say, you know what, dude, I'd love to come see you sometime. I want to come experience Columbus. I want to come check this place out. They don't say that. Not necessarily out of a thing of like, oh, they don't care.
Yeah.
But again, subconsciously, they're in a bubble. So to them, the only correct offer is next time you're down here, totally let me
Life
know.
stayed the
Like,
same for them. You stepped out, let them know when you step back in.
Yeah.
That's literally how it is.
or I've also had it where people were like, hey, I'm going to be in town for this. Maybe I can stop by and see you, which it's more just like a, hey, I'm in town, maybe we can grab lunch or something, which is nice. But nobody's like, I've had people legitimately where like I specifically made a point to travel that 2 hours to go and see these people, and they will not just make a plan to travel 2 hours to come see me. Even if I make the invite, it's more of like a, and I've even had people where it's like, and I always offer, I'm like, oh, you can come stay if you're, you know, going to be in town or whatever. But that's a thing that I've noticed is it's kind of like an in passing kind of thing. When it's convenient for them, then, hey, if I'm in town, I will come see you. Or, hey, when you're in town, you can come see me.
it's often out of a convenience rather than like a genuine want. It seems like sometimes.
Well, and I have friends that'll reach out and say things like, when are you guys free next? Like, I'd really love to see you. But I know, because I've had these conversations enough times, that I'm like, when they say, hey, when are you guys free next? That means, hey, when are you going to come over next? Not, hey, when are we going to get together? Because it's become routine. Hey, I'm going to come to your house and we're going to hang out. I'm going to drive that 2 hours and we're going to hang out and literally just do that. It's not, hey, like, let's make a plan to do something. Even at a halfway point, like, it's never that. It's always the expectation of me going there. And I know that I made like the decision to move. That's fully on me.
Right.
But also, I feel like when you care about people and you want to keep that connection with people, I think it's important to not only be the person that's like, hey, I want to see you, let's get together, but also like, hey, you came to me last time, let's go to you this time. And it's, again, I know that it takes me inviting people, but I do that. I don't know if you have the same thing.
Yeah, I definitely, again, like for me when I was moving up here, it was a little bit of like escaping, just not feeling in place, not feeling like, oh
You
yeah,
were
I
cool
really fit
to
in.
have a break,
I
like a
was
beat
cool to
away.
have a break. And there was, consistent talks with like friends of like, oh, you should come up and meet my new friends up here, and let's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, let's blend the worlds together and have fun and all this sort of, and there wasn't really an interest on that part. But for me, it was a little bit different, at least at the beginning, setting kind of a different standard and a different bar of like, I am almost intentionally separating these things. Not because I want them to be separate, but more so like I need the space
You need
from
the
this
space
original thing.
And you need the space to have time to do like the other things you're trying to experience while you're up here. If
Yeah,
you're
'cause, yeah.
constantly like getting other people to feel how you feel about where you live or whatever, then you are not like moving past that.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the like secondary reasons that I came up here were at the time career focused of like, all right, I know I can network more in these ways. I know I can grow more in these ways.
Yeah.
And then the byproduct of that is like, oh, wow, I actually like this place. And now I'm becoming a human in these different ways and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
There's the extra benefits of course, introducing yourself to a new world, a new environment. It helps when you have an intention, because I wasn't just like trying to run from, there was nothing I was running from, you know what I mean?
No,
It wasn't
no.
like, oh my God, I hate my hometown.
Pilgrims.
I wasn't running from the Pilgrims. I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to change everything, because again, ultimately it's like, that's up to us. We
Yeah.
can't just, we've talked about that on past episodes, like moving somewhere does not solve problems. It doesn't change everything that you are. It changes your environment.
Yes.
But you're going to grow into a different person in that environment, or you're going to carry the same things with you. Like I was still just small town Ross dude, just happened to live in Columbus for the first few years. And then I started learning like, oh wait, this is how to be a different person. This
Well,
is
and
how,
adapting to the situation
Yeah.
is so important too, because
Exactly.
like I never was like if you had told me before I met Nick, like that I would be living in Columbus, like that would be my home as like my adult life or whatever. And not to say that I don't know that we'll stay here for the rest of my
Right.
life or anything, but to think about that, like I never would have thought, oh, Columbus, Ohio, like, yeah, that's going to be my place. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it was more about like, oh, this situation with this person is working out in this way and this became a happy place for me. And I feel like it's the same for you, where it's like, hey, you didn't come here because you're like, oh, it's Columbus, I have to go to Columbus because that's what Columbus offers me. It was, I built connections here and this just seems like the place for me to be right now.
I don't know what it, at the time, I was like, I don't know what it is, but I want to see what I can become in Columbus.
Yeah.
Sure.
More so rather than, oh my God, what can Columbus give to me and it can change everything for me and all this sort of stuff. Of course, I was like, more opportunities, more fun, but it definitely was. I think that same way now. People will bring up to me like with filmmaking stuff. They're like, oh my God, why don't you move to LA? I'm like, why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I ultimately know who I am, my wants and needs. And sure, having that clarity means I could move anywhere and probably find what I want and I need there. Mm-hmm. But I don't have that desire of, oh, if I move somewhere else, then life changes for me.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, like I just understand who I am and what I want. And like, whether it's not even a huge move to like LA or like, if it's a move to like Cincinnati or something like that, I'm like, I don't really have
Is this your soft launch?
soft launch into.
Moving to Cincinnati?
No, I'm literally saying I have no interest in doing that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Well, I
like
was going to ask do you guys have any places where you've ever thought about moving to? Like now that we are adults and like we have that option to make that jump.
I probably never will, because I know it's more of like a cool desire of like, wouldn't that be so fun, rather than a, do I actually want to?
Yeah.
I love Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. I've never been there, But I do have those like daydreams of like, oh man, just like the environment up there, just like chilling, living there would be so cool.
I
But
want to like
think
live
it's
my twilight dreams in the Pacific
right,
Northwest.
right, yeah. But for me, it's I don't really, I don't know. I'm open to if something, you know what I mean. If life changed
You
in a
don't
way
have
where
like
it's
a,
like,
I just simply want to experience this place, not because my life will get better or worse or I'll change, but just I want to be in this environment.
Yeah, it's
because
like-
that's
yeah.
how I am about Salem. Like I will probably eventually move to Salem in the right circumstances because I just want to.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun.
Absolutely.
And you guys can drive to see me whenever you want.
I have made that drive and it's not a fun one.
It's
I feel
not.
like I would probably just opt for the plane ticket and make you
Yes.
come pick me up.
I got you.
Season 25 of Honestly Same going to be over Zoom, you guys. We're going to be recording them remotely.
Man,
at that
you're
point in time.
really making me move when I'm like 50.
Oh, season 3 of Honestly
Okay.
Same going to be all
Oh.
recorded remotely. Yeah, I mean, is there a place that you have in mind?
I don't necessarily think that there's a place that I want to go specifically. Nick and I have definitely said we don't necessarily want to stay like where we are forever. And I'll go, well, where do you want to go? And he goes, I don't know, maybe Uptown Westerville.
Oh my God.
I'm like, and I love Uptown Westerville because it is super cute and it has a lot of character and all of that stuff. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've experienced the whole like completely separating yourself from being in the place where you're used to and you're comfortable. He hasn't had that before. And I feel like if I made the full jump, I feel like I'd want to go somewhere that felt really different. Because I moved somewhere that literally, like I said, it's like I moved from somewhere that was like Westerville to somewhere that is Westerville.
Yeah.
So I feel like it would be really cool to kind of experience a different like type of maybe like not culture necessarily. Like I don't want to necessarily like move to a different country.
I mean, there's like
Of course.
beach
But, like-
towns. There's like bigger cities. There's
Yes.
mountains.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd be a city girl. I don't think I could ever be a city girl necessarily.
I can't drive,
because
so.
the anxiety of like city parking, like,
Yeah, no.
I can't
don't
do that.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's as
but,
cool as
like
no, yeah.
Pacific Northwest, I think is awesome. I feel like anywhere where there's, I always like to be somewhere where it's like at least somewhat close to water. Like water is within driving distance. It doesn't have to obviously be an ocean. It could be a lake, even like just a big like creek or something. I don't know. I like to be near water, and I feel like that's kind of a must for me. But besides that, I'm like,
Yeah,
it could
otherwise
be anywhere.
Yeah, I'm open to life taking me anywhere, and if I'm like, okay, I see a reason why I would move to this other place, I'm like, cool, let's go. Like, super comfortable with that. Like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
But like you were saying, for me, moving to Columbus, that was my like big kind
Yeah.
of life changing move. Where like
Mm-hmm.
it was a little bit of a culture shock. It was a little bit of like, whoa, this is what it's like up here. Where again, when friends who have lived in Columbus their whole life are like, dude, it sucks here, I want to move. I'm like, it sucks to you. This
Yeah.
is where you're from. To me, I'm like, wow, anything I want is within a 10 to 15 minute drive. Amazing. I had to go 20 minutes or more to even
To get to McDonald's.
get
Yeah.
McDonald's when I was younger.
So here's
Like,
maybe a better question for you then. What would it take for you to move? Like what would have to be on the table in order for you to be like, okay, I'm going to make this jump?
this is going to be such a silly answer, but I honestly don't even think, unless it was like the most major career thing ever, maybe that could take me somewhere else.
Do you think you'd ever move for a relationship?
That's
like what I did.
Literally what I was going to say. That's probably the main reason that I would move. Like that's
Okay.
what it
Which
would
is
take.
really a no-brainer because you're moving for a person, not for the space.
Yeah, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather move for that, happiness or that, whatever that comes
Yeah.
with a relationship.
That I
Like,
cannot get here.
yeah,
Like-
exactly. So yeah, like that would be my number one answer is like, what would it take to get me to move somewhere? It would be a relationship. Like,
Yeah.
I would, again, it would have to take the ultimate crazy wild career thing for me
Mm-hmm.
to actually want to move for it.
Yeah. Which also you can travel. Like we can all travel to these
Exactly.
places
If
and-
it's a work thing, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll fly out once a month. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. But so yeah, for me, it would be a relationship. Like
Okay.
that's what I would move for.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I think ultimately me moving for my relationship, and Nick had been asking me, cause his roommate had moved out. And he was like, you could just come move in. And I mean, it was like very early in our relationship where I was like, I feel like that's a little quick. And I feel like everyone else around me is going to be like, you're crazy. What are you doing? But I think that like, kind of like I said, it became my happy place.
And we're on a floating rock. So like,
Yeah. Who
Yes.
cares where
fucking
on the
cares?
floating rock you are?
Yes.
Because
Like,
in the
truly.
grand scheme of things, you're like this much further from where you started.
yes.
Because man, I know people that live in different countries, like people I went to school with that like completely jumped off the rock and went to a different one. Like
My
Yeah.
my three
That's
closest
so
friends
crazy.
are like Cincinnati, North Carolina, fucking Chicago. Like
well,
they
I'm talking
just are
like
all over the
Japan,
place.
Germany, like
Yeah.
that's crazy
Oh yeah,
to me. I'm like
my
that's
friends.
culture
I have a
shock.
friend on Mars, and I have a friend on the moon. My
Yeah.
friends are further.
The man on the moon is your friend.
Yeah.
Yep.
He is made of cheese.
my friend Cheese
My-
lives
Yes.
on the moon.
The pilgrims took him there.
As we wrap this episode up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
do we want to kind of end it with like either leaving off with like, okay, ultimately, what have our experiences been like moving? And if we're talking to somebody who is contemplating a move or is like whatever, or just like wonders about like what is it? Do we want to like share something with them as we kind of leave off for this episode? Is it like, hey, this is what I learned from my move, or hey, this is a reminder if you're thinking about it, or
Sure. Well, why don't you go ahead? It sounds like you have an idea of maybe something you want to say.
I didn't,
Just
but I will
get it
come
off your-
up with one now. Yeah, I guess my thing would be two things. One, be willing to experience other parts of the world. Like that would be like the, to somebody from like my hometown area who was like, oh my God, I can't leave my bubble. Like I think about those types of people,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying that's inherently bad if that's what they love and they're comfortable. Of course, stay in your small town.
But would encourage you to like take a trip.
learn
Yeah.
other things.
Go on
Yeah,
vacation.
like experience that there's other people, there's other things to go out and experience. So like that would be my first thing is like try to burst that bubble a little bit, realize there's more to the world, even if it is just a trip or whatever. But yeah, who knows what can happen if you just move somewhere for 6 months or a year. And then my other thing is I will honestly just double down on, again, we've already talked about it, but like also know that if you're contemplating a move just in the sake of you think it's going to change you and your life or get rid of your problems, you got to do that core inner work first
Yeah.
because wherever you move, your problems are ultimately going to follow. So I would say like,
Check out the pivot episode.
yes, listen, yeah, we dive probably deeper into that episode. But yeah, that would be my two things is know why you want to move, but also be open to just going and experiencing life, but not in a way of like, this will fix my life if I move. If you're moving
Yeah.
for like, I'm going to get to experience more, then great, go do it.
Yeah. I would say mine would probably be it can definitely be scary and there are definitely pros and cons, but I wouldn't be where I am right now, like literally physically and mentally, emotionally. I wouldn't be where I am right now. I wouldn't have like the friends that I've made. I wouldn't have the career path that I've chosen. I think that it's important to make moves in your life, and if that means like physically moving yourself to a new location in order to make those things happen for you, I think that that's an important step to take. Like, don't ever be afraid to step out of your bubble just because you're comfortable and you, even if you're happy and completely like, oh, I love the people that are surrounding me. If ultimately you have an opportunity that you think could be your happy place or your happy person, your happy thing, and it could take you elsewhere, home is always going to be there waiting for you.
Yes. Nothing is like permanent. You're not
Yeah.
stuck somewhere because, I mean, depending on if you have like a felony or something, it's a little different for all of our felony people out there. Our felony
Hey, our-
samesies.
Felons.
Our felon samesies.
Yeah, nothing is permanent in that way. Like,
You can always move back.
yes.
You can
yes.
always move back.
You can always try something and see if it's going to work for you. And I tell you what, everyone's always worried. This is what I'll leave it with. That to make a mistake because of how it's going to be perceived to the people that weighed in or they're afraid will judge them for whatever they're doing. You are just a blip on whoever that is on their timeline. They might think about it and go, oh yeah, she fucked up by doing that or whatever. But like, it's your life. You got to figure it out for yourself. So as long as we're not worrying about that, because it's just not going to take you anywhere. Yeah. So I just think that, yeah, I encourage healthy trips and seeing what's out there.
Yeah.
Well, if you do want to make a move pretty immediately. Move on over to the subscribe and follow buttons wherever you check this out on.
And plant your roots there, man. You know, like
Plant your
get
roots
comfortable.
And that follow
At
button.
our follow button. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plant your roots there and also plant them
5
at honestly
stars
same
on our
pod.
hotel. Honestly, same pod.
Airbnb.
Yes.
Wait, we have
Give us a
hotels
good
and
review.
Airbnbs?
5-star. Yeah, on the Spotify app.
Oh yes. Wait. We have a hotel there. What?
No, I'm just trying. I
confused.
don't know. We're trying to make
Oh,
euphemisms that are
moving
like.
puns. I missed it. I didn't
Yes.
get the
You
cue.
started it.
I did start it, but I didn't know we were continuing.
You just
with
didn't
it.
know we were so good at it.
Okay,
Yeah.
pack on up and head over to the rating and review button,
Yep.
right, guys?
All right.
Yeah,
We're
I
gonna
think-
hit
And now
that button and move
I think
on.
Brittany's gonna move to the button and hit it.
Bye.